everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending upon where you are. My name is Professor Cihan Çobanoğlu. I am the president of ANAHEI. I also need to click on, recording, perfect. We have our Association of North America Higher Education International Lecture Series. We have Professor Hossein Olya with us today. Before we go into his webinar and lecture, I would like to go over some information about the Association of North America Higher Education International. One more time, I welcome you formally to this lecture series. And also, this is, as you probably may be watching this on the Facebook, it's also live on Facebook. And let's get started. I would like to just share my screen with you. I hope that you are seeing it. Again, one more time, welcome to our webinar, Innovative Analytical Approaches in Tourism Marketing Studies with Professor Hossein Olya, who's here right now from attending to this webinar from Korea, and it's midnight there. So thank you so much for Professor Olya doing this. My name is Professor Cihan Çobanoğlu. I am the president of Association of North America Higher Education International. I also serve as the McKibben Endowed Chair Professor at the University of South Florida, Sarasota Manatee. I also edit 3 journals, as you can see here. I also would like to introduce Dr. Hossein Olya. He is the Director of Research Methods and Statistics for ANAHEI, Association of North America Higher Education International. I also would like to thank him for arranging this webinar with Professor Olya. Just to keep quick housekeeping items for those of you who are attending from Zoom tool, is that I hope you hear me nice and clear and see the screen. If you do, you should be able to see in your control panel, raise hand. If you click on raise hand, this will tell us that you are hearing us good and everything is clear. Just click on raise hand on your control panel, and then as you do it, we will be able to see. Perfect, that's great. I see that many of you are raising hands. We appreciate you can click back to get it back to normal. Throughout the lecture, Professor Olya is very happy to receive your questions. Click on chat or questions, as you can see on your control panel, to ask him any questions that you may have throughout the lecture. At the end of his lecture, he's going to take these questions I will read, and he will be able to answer it for us. Again, I see that some people are, perfect. Some of our attendees are already using the chat tool, which is perfect. Again, just a quick introduction of ANAHEI, Association of North America Higher Education, is a not-for-profit organization. The mission is to promote and encourage a global culture at member institutions, globalize student and faculty successes, enhance global initiatives among member institutions, and deepen global engagement. One of ways of doing this, what ANAHEI has the mission, is just this lecture. We have a global professor coming from the other part of the world to meet with all the attendees in this webinar. And of course, we are recording this webinar, and that means that it will be available to all of you who may not be here today at this time, but hopefully you'll benefit from this lecture and all the other programs ANAHEI offers, such as visiting scholar programs, partnerships programs, journals. ANAHEI has 2 journals publishes, and I will talk about them in a second, conferences, awards, and distinguished lecture series, and this, of course, this lecture series as well. The first journal of ANAHEI is International Interdisciplinary Business Economics Advancement Journal. This is a baby journal, only 3 years old, open access, which means that it doesn't cost any money to submit an article or access the articles. It's true open access. It's provided as a service to the academia. ibajournal.org is the website. Another one is a new journal, also open access, just like the other one, Journal of Global Education and Research, journal.anahei.org. We encourage all of you to submit your articles there. Conferences of ANAHEI. The first one is Global Conference on Education and Research. This happened last month, 2 months ago in Sarasota. Very successful conference. Next one is going to be in April in Las Vegas, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Again, the information you can find closer.org. The next conference is International Interdisciplinary Business Economics Advancement Conference. That's going to take place 18th, 23rd in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This conference actually is a cruise conference, a conference on the cruise. Graduate Student Research Conference in Business and Economics is another conference of ANAHEI that took place in May. It will be next year in April in Sarasota. The other one is GLOSSERV. This is going to happen in October in an amazing location. Thanks to CIAF, our partner, glosserv.org, Global Conference on Services Management in Volterra, which is the heart of Tuscany in Italy. And next year in March, Florida International University and USF Sarasota Manatee sponsors Global Conference on Hospitality, Tourism, Event and Leisure Management Conference. That's going to take place March 14 to 17. We encourage all of you to submit abstracts and papers to this conference. We also have distinguished lecture series. We featured Professor Ravidar earlier. All of these are available on ANAHEI website. Please feel free to go to anahei.org and you can see ANAHEI.org. We had also Professor Altanai with us on the same series. Just recently, we also had Professor Jason Shao. He is the editor of the Academy of Management Journal. And of course, all of these video recordings are available just like today. We are recording right now with Professor Olya. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Professor Olya to you, and then I will leave the floor to him for his wonderful, great lecture. Professor Hossein Olya is an assistant professor of tourism management at Sejong University, Seoul, South Korea. He contributes as the methodology editor of the Service Industries Journal. He was the head of tourism department at British University of Nicosia, Cyprus, since September 2015 till August 2016. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Natural Resource Engineering. Think about interdisciplinary here, wonderful, at the University of Tehran in Iran, and Master of Science degree in Natural Resource Engineering at Zabul University. He received his PhD degree in June 2015 in Tourism Management in the Tourism Faculty at Eastern Mediterranean University. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Olya for his lecture. Dr. Olya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone for joining to this webinar. I would like to share my screen to everyone so you will be able to see my PowerPoint for this webinar. I would like to special thanks to Professor Cihan Çobanoglu and also Dr. Faizan Ali for organizing this webinar that focus on innovative analytical approaches in tourism marketing studies. Our agenda in this webinar include 7 sections. The first sections I will provide some background about the qualitative comparative analysis as a relatively new analytical approach in tourism field. Then I will compare the traditional approach or conventional approach, like SEM, correlation analysis. We call this approach nowadays as a traditional approaches. Then fsQCA, which stands for fuzzy set qualitative comparative analysis, and NCA, which stands for necessary condition analysis. The third item is I will teach how to perform 3 steps of the fsQCA. Then I depicted pictures that show how to design a survey-based research in tourism study using 3 methodological approach that I explained, like traditional approaches, fsQCA and NCA. It would be helpful for researcher, young researcher, and postgraduate students to know how they can design their research when they measure with survey. The mean of the research is survey-based. Then I will introduce the softwares that the participant can use and apply these new approaches. I will provide also some area of the management studies that this innovative approach have been applied, and also I will provide some directions for future studies that we have a little research on that increase the contribution of their study, and they will have more chance to get their work published in serious journals. At the end, I provided more sources and references to learn and know more about this analytical approach. Let us start with the introduction part. As the introduction part, I can tell you that this qualitative comparative analysis that include several approaches I will explain, actually it fills the gulf between qualitative and quantitative approach. All of the researchers know that always we have a fight and arguments between the researcher who use qualitative approach and those who use quantitative approach. Those who applied qualitative approach condemn and criticize the quantitative approach because of the just considering some probabilistic measure like p less than 0.05 or 0.01 as a criteria for the acceptance or rejection of the phenomena. And they mentioned the social science is not like that you just reject a social phenomena by considering some specific cutoff of some probabilistic measure like p-value or t-value. And also you know that those who use quantitative approach, they have question about the reliability and validity of the findings of the research that they use qualitative approach. So we have this argument for a long term, and all of you are familiar with this. But now we have a third way that called qualitative comparative analysis. Actually, this method function as a bridge between these two methodological approach. Apart from this, this method do not consider many strict assumptions that we need to satisfy in conventional research like SEM, regression analysis, and correlation analysis. For example, in the qualitative comparative analysis, we don't have too much stress about multicollinearity issues. I will explain when I explain the method and the background, you will understand that we don't need to provide evidence of the multicollinearity issues in our research. And also, we don't have collect a small sample size to come up with the normal data, normal distribution of the data that are the main assumptions of the SEM and regression analysis. I mean, these are the advantages of this method. The third properties of this approach is this approach considers contrarian cases. I exemplified what are the contrarian cases. This is a result of one of my research published in Journal of Travel Research just last year. I measured the support of the tourism development by residents, as you can see, as outcome, and also satisfaction with their quality of life as indicators. All of you know that based on the social exchange theory, those who are satisfied with their quality of life, most likely they express more support for tourism development. But when we conduct a cross-tabulation analysis that shows us the contrarian case, we found that there are some cases, there are some residences that they are not satisfied with their quality of life, but still they are supporting for tourism development in their locations. So we call these people that they are against the theoretical background and against the literature, but they are real. We have these people. We are going to consider the view of these people. It's not like conventional research that we ignore their view. Let me take another example. Still, you have a support for tourism development as an outcome. Indicator here is negative impact of the tourism. Again, based on the social exchange theory, we expected those residents that perceived high level of the negative impact of the tourism to show less level of the support. It means that they believe that this tourism has a negative impact, then why I should support this tourism? But the results show that, the result of the cross-evaluation analysis show that still we have a people that believe tourism has a negative impact, but they are supporting tourism development project and plans. So in qualitative comparative analysis, we include the view of these people. So then one of the important feature of this method is that we are considering the view of the whole voices, which is very important. This is very important for the, I'm going to exemplify and provide some directions for further research, which is luxury travelers. You know, luxury travelers, the quantity is not important. The quality is important. If you pick some few luxury travelers, you can market your services and you can run your businesses. So contrarian cases are important in our field. Most important function of this method is that in inus conditions. What is inus conditions? I'm going to explain more in this slide. Inus conditions talk about the necessary and sufficient conditions, necessary and insufficient conditions, not necessary conditions, and sufficient conditions. All are different. Maybe these terms are new to you. I'm going to take an example, a tangible example that you frequently see in the many papers. Look at the first item. I'm going to talk about the possible conditions for increasing the performance of your hotel employees. In the literature, we know that if we increase the salary, their performance will be increased. This is the first possible conditions, very simple. In this situation, in this condition, salary is necessary and sufficient condition. What does it mean? It means that if we want to have a performance, we must increase the salary, which means necessary. And it's sufficient because just we have, by increasing the salary, we get the performance. There is not any other factor in the model. So in the first model, salary is necessary and sufficient. In the second option, look at the second condition. If you want to have a performance, you should have reward system and salary. In this methodology, we use a star as a symbol of and. We translate this as and plus as or, and this symbol as a negation. I will explain these items later on, but just you need to know that for the interpreting these conditions. I'm going to repeat the second condition. In the second condition, if you want to have a high level of the performance, you should have a reward system, active reward system, and increase the salary. So in this condition, salary is necessary. Yes, we have it in the model, but not sufficient. What does it mean? It means that it's not sufficient. We should have a reward system aligned salary, increasing the salary. So you can compare the conditions. In the first one, salary, just one item, one factor that lead to the performance. Then it was necessary and sufficient. But in the second one, we have one more factor, one more indicator, which is reward. When you add one more reward, one more factor, which is reward, so salary is not sufficient anymore, although it's necessary still. Look at the third condition, you will understand clearly. The third condition advises us that the reward or salary lead to high level of the performance? Reward or salary? Now, what is the role of the salary? Salary is sufficient, but not necessary. Yes, apparently, salary is sufficient for increasing the performance, but it's not necessary, because by applying the reward system, you will reach to high level of the performance. Look at the last condition. Reward and salary, or training and empowerment, increase the performance. So you can see now the condition get more complicated. We have more factors. We have and or. Now, what is the role of the salary? Salary is neither sufficient nor necessary. Why? It's not necessary because we have reward beside of the salary. Is not sufficient because we have one more complex condition, which is training and empowerment. It means that if you want to get high performance, you can organize some training sessions and increase the empowerment of your employee. I provided some other conditions to explain and understand more these in-use conditions, which is very important and basic for understanding this methodological approach. Look at this condition: reward and salary, or training and empowerment, lead to the high level of the performance. It's not just this recipe, it's not just this model that lead to the high level of performance. We have other models, like if you have increasing the salary and empowerment in your hotel, still if you don't have reward system, some of your employee have high level of the performance. So you see that in this method, we are not just seeking one simple condition. This helps us to consider the contrarian cases as well. Normally, you know that if you have a reward system, you will get performance. But there are some employees that if you don't have a reward system, still the performance is high. So you see that this talk about the causal complexity. You see, we are coming up with many conditions, many complex conditions, which well accommodated social science, specifically tourism studies that we have, which is multidisciplinary issues, many factors, social, cultural, economic, political, technological factors, external and internal factors affect the phenomena. So we are facing with the complex phenomena. We need to explore complex causal condition that lead to our given outcome. As I mentioned, the advantage of this method is that we can run our model with a small to medium size sample, which is very important. You know that many students, many researchers, they have a constraint, time constraint and other type of the resources constraint to collect a large sample size. They can explore and come up with the findings and the outcome by using this method. Still, this method is powerful and applicable for the large sample size. The last characteristic of this method that I'm going to explain is we call this method as a set theoretic method. Why? Because we are dealing with the set conditions. I think all of you are familiar with the algebra, Boolean algebra functions, that they are talking about the set intersections, logical AND, set union, logical OR, and set negation. What is a set negation? Set negations means that one minus outcome or low level of the outcome. Let me to exemplify this set negation to our participants. I'm going to stick the last example. As we learned, high level of the reward and salary lead to the performance. But what about the low performance? In conventional research, simply we consider the mirror opposite of the causal model as the conditions that lead to the low level of the outcome, like the first condition. For example, if high level of the reward and high level of the salary increase to high level of the performance, then simply we can say low level of the reward, low level of the salary lead to the low level of the performance. In the conventional research, we consider this rule. But in reality, it's not like that. The models, the causal conditions that lead to the low level of the outcome is not simply mirror opposite of the conditions that lead to high level of the outcomes. As you can see, the first conditions that lead to the low level of the outcome, which is low level of the performance, is based on the conventional thinking. Yes, low level of the reward, low level of the salary lead to the low level of the performance. But in reality, we have some people, although the salary is high, but they don't have reward system. Because of this, their performance is low. We have another possible conditions that lead to low level of the performance. Like, although you have a reward system, but the salary is low, then you have low level of performance among your employees. So you see that we have other possible conditions, other alternative conditions that lead to the low level of the outcome. So this method told us and explore all possible conditions that lead to low level of the outcomes, which are not mirror opposite of the high level of the outcome. I mean the conditions that lead to high level of the outcome. So these are some backgrounds that I think that would help participants to understand other sections. Now I want to compare conventional research and new methodological approach that we are focusing on. I try to take example from tourism and hospitality field, which are tangible to the participants. I took example from the study published by Pedaraja and Justice in 2004. They found that quality and price as two determinants of the satisfaction of the restaurant customers. They found that high level of the quality of the food lead to the high level of the satisfaction. It means that quality of the food serve as a positive indicator of the satisfaction. And they found that the price serve as a negative factor. It means that the high level of the price decrease the satisfaction of the customers. So normally we draw our model like this. We use oval shape. We come up with the effect and the strength of the factors, and we interpret like this: quality increase satisfaction and high price decrease satisfaction. Then by using conventional research like SEM and regression analysis, we investigate the sufficient factor or sufficient antecedent. But we don't know about the combination of this factor, the effect of the combination of the factors. If we combine the effect of these two factors, then what will happen to the satisfaction of the customers? And this is more matched with the system of the human thinking. You know that humans consider many factors at the same time together. Then we need a method like fsQCA that explores sufficient configuration. It means the complex combination of the factors. How we can combine the effect of the factors to lead to the outcome. So this method told us sufficient configuration that lead to the high satisfaction. We come up with two possible conditions. The first condition is that high level of the quality of the food and low level of the price lead to satisfaction. Maybe majority of the customers follow this rule, follow this thinking. Yes, if the quality of food is high and the price is reasonable, so I'm happy, I'm satisfied with this restaurant. But still we have more conditions. Maybe we have other people that they have other views or another view. Look at the second causal recipe. We call it as a recipe. Why? Because we consider the factor as an ingredient of this configuration. So we call it as a recipe. So we have two recipes that lead to the satisfaction of the customers. We review the first one. The second one advise us, confirm us that quality, high level of the quality of the food and high level of the price lead to the satisfaction. Yes, you know, this is a new thing. Many people, they are rich, they don't care about the price, but quality is very important to them. So still if you offer them high level of the quality of the food with high level of the price, they would be satisfied. So you see that we are generating new insight about the phenomena. We claim that this method is not just a method that do analysis for us. This is a function for generating the knowledge. Yes, we talk about the sufficient antecedent using conventional research like SEM. We talk about the sufficient configuration, but remember, we talk about the sufficiency and necessity. What about the necessary condition? What does it mean, necessary condition? Necessary condition means that without this indicator, without this condition, we would not have that outcome. Yes, we explored and we identified quality as a necessary condition for satisfaction of the customers. It means that customer believe that the quality of the food is key and is necessary for our satisfaction. Although maybe price is sufficient, is important, but is not necessary for the satisfaction. So I hope that you get some ideas about the function of each method.
I also would like to, Professor Olya, remind all of the audience is to please write their questions as they come in the chat or questions button, or in the Facebook, they can also write in the comment. I will pass them to you at the end of your presentation.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I actually outlined one table that show the comparison of the symmetrical approach, the conventional approach, with this new method, configural modeling. Why we call it configural modeling? Because we are introducing configuration as a causal model. Configuration means the combination of the factors, causal factors. So we call it as a configural modeling. It has several names that I'm trying to use, several names that then you will get familiar with the different names. And also I provided these tables that will help you to read the articles that use this method, and also it would help you to know how to report the articles, your research when you use this method. I'm sure that you are familiar with independent variables, which are like determinants or indicators. You are familiar with these terms, but in configural modeling or like fsQCA and NCA, we call it as antecedent ingredient indicator. Dependent variable, sometimes we call it the outcome. In the configural modeling, we don't mention this as a dependent variable anymore. We call it as outcome condition or outcome. And when we talk about the measurement in the symmetric modeling or conventional research, in the configural modeling, you should use the term of the calibration instead of the measurement. Counterfactual estimations, we need to use counterfactual analysis. I will explain what is the calibration, counterfactual analysis, and other terms in the future slides. In the conventional research, we have correlation matrix. I'm sure that you are familiar. Here, in this method, we have truth table. In symmetrical modeling, we have net effect, which means the effect of each factor. Here, we have a causal recipe, causal model, causal algorithm, or solution. And many researchers use solution as a causal recipe or causal model when they believe that they are modeling a complex phenomena. When they are talking about the complex phenomena, this causal recipe can be a solution for reaching or for explaining that complex outcome or complex phenomena. So if I use causal recipe, causal model, causal algorithms, and solutions, then you would know that you are talking about the like net effect in a symmetrical modeling. We have coverage in configural modeling, which is similar to the R-square, which is a coefficient of the determination. You know that the R-square told us to what extent the variation of the dependent variable explained by independent variables. Here we have those measures. We have coverage as a measure. I will explain more in the future slides. I don't want to spend too much time for this slide because it's just explaining some terms. We have consistency, which is analogous to the correlation in symmetrical approach. Importantly and interestingly, the type of the model that you are sketching and drawing in the symmetrical modeling is different in configural modeling. You know that in symmetrical modeling, you use a square or oval or circle for drawing our model, for depicting our model. But here we are using Venn diagram. I provided some examples, and you would see that what is the Venn diagram and how we can draw the model that represent, we apply fsQCA for model testing. We have this sign star which means and negations. We don't have these symbols in the symmetrical approach. Why? Because we use Boolean algebra as a function of the model testing in configurational modeling, which we don't have in symmetrical modeling. I also, because I feel that this would be new to the participants, I try to provide more practical examples, more examples from the articles that are published in the journals, in the serious journals. Then a participant would be able to read and reach those models in the original research. For example, Moreno in 2016, they model future intentions of the basketball spectators. They come up with these structural models. They consider service quality, perceived value, satisfaction, match result, pleasure, and arousal are the indicators of the future intention. As you can see, based on the results, service quality, perceived value, and satisfactions are sufficient antecedents of the future intentions. So this model told us what factors are sufficient to have a future intentions among basketball spectators. So we need to investigate sufficient antecedents using conventional research. Now we need to explore sufficient configurations. It means the combination of the factors, combination of the antecedents. They applied fsQCA and they come up with the several models that lead to the high level of the future intentions of the spectators. Look at the causal recipes. If the arousal is high, satisfaction is high, match results is satisfactory, then probably they have more intentions to come up with this event. It's not just one model. You can see they come up with several models. If they are satisfied and they perceive value, they would come to this event again. If they have pleasure and they perceive value, is another possible conditions. So you see they come up with several causal recipes that lead to the high level of the outcome, which is future intentions. It's pragmatic approach. You see, it's a pragmatic method. Why? Because managers and organizers of the sport and other events, they know how to create the conditions, how to combine different factors which are important in the success of their events together to reach to the high level of the outcome, which is future intention. For example, managers know high level of the service quality and satisfaction. Then they can set strategies to offer high level of the service quality and try to increase the satisfaction of the spectators. So you see that is informative approach, is pragmatic approach. And I believe that the managers and the practitioners would like to see such results because I met some practitioners. They mentioned that you are just talking about the net effect of the factors. For example, if you want to have this high level of the performance or satisfaction among the employee, you are telling about the reward and training and empowerment. But in reality, in the field, it's very complex. You need to combine the effect of the factors together, consider all factors at the same time, and see how we can reach to the given outcome. Yes, we talk about the sufficient antecedent using SEM. We talk about the sufficient configuration using fsQCA. Now we need to know what factors are necessary for future intention of the basketball spectators. So they run another model, another analysis, necessary condition analysis, and they see that none of the factors are necessary. Actually, they consider the high level of the consistency among the antecedents, which is more than 0.9. This is the cutoff level for identifying the necessary antecedents. As you can see, none of the factors reach to this and satisfy this commonly accepted level. So for the future intention of the basketball spectators, we don't have a necessary conditions. We don't have factors that without those factors, we would not have high level of the future intentions. But I took another example which is very tangible and which is very informative for the necessary condition analysis from the work of the Dool that published in 2016. They modeled relational attractiveness of the customer as outcome, as the final outcome, that actually this represent the attitude of the suppliers toward their customer firms, that they want to regulate their attitude and their behavior with their customers and their business partners. What factors are important for regulating those attitudes and those behaviors? They employed several factors that maybe these factors function as a sufficient antecedents, like trust. Trust is a sufficient factor for RAC. Dependency, financial benefit, non-financial benefits, and cost. They run necessary condition analysis and they come up with two necessary conditions, which are financial benefits, non-financial benefits. Why? Because the consistency level is more than 0.9. So you see, although these factors are important, maybe they are sufficient to reach relative attractiveness of the customer, but they are not necessary. Trust is not necessary. Dependency is not necessary. Cost is not necessary. But financial benefits and non-financial benefits are key, are necessary. Without the benefits, either financial or non-financial, you would not have relational attractiveness of the customers. So you see how these results inform the practitioners to care about the factors, to care about the conditions that they are dealing with. Okay, we compared these three approaches. Now we want to see how we can perform fsQCA as an innovative approach. fsQCA consists of three steps. The first step is calibration. The second step is fuzzy truth table algorithm. And the third step is counterfactual analysis. Actually, this process performed by the program, you don't need to do it by yourself step by step. The computer helps you to conduct this analysis, but I want to explain what does it mean, calibration and other steps. Actually, calibration is a transformation of the crisp value to fuzzy form. You know, we are collecting crisp value like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That 1 is a strongly disagree, 2 disagree, 3 neutral, 4 agree, and 5 is strongly agree. These are crisp value. We call it crisp value. When we change the type of the R value to the fuzzy form, which is totally different than the crisp value, I will explain how. We call this transformation of the type of the value, we call it as a calibration. Actually, we're calibrating our value. We're changing the type of our value from crisp value to fuzzy form. In fuzzy form, we don't have such value. We have full non-membership and full membership. What does it mean? And it ranges from 0 to 1. 1 is full membership. It means that actually it's equal to the strongly agree. It means that the tourists, for example, tourists are strongly agree, and 1 shows that this group of the tourists are fully member of the strongly agree, I mean satisfied tourist. I mean that they are fully member of the satisfied tourist. But 0 shows that they are fully non-member of satisfied tourists, but maybe we call this as a they are not fully member of the strong agree, satisfied tourists, but they are fully member of dissatisfied tourists. And 3 is neutral and 0.5 is crossover point. It means that the tourists neither satisfied, neither dissatisfied. So we are transforming the value to another form of the data. I mean the value. I depicted and I compared this. I projected the fuzzy form values in the diagrams. You can see 0 is full non-membership, which is like dissatisfied tourists, and one is full membership, which is satisfied tourists. They are fully satisfied. But satisfied tourists like this S, which is number 4, the number of the fuzzy form is 0.75. It means that 75% they are member of satisfied tourists, and 25% they are member of dissatisfied tourists. And 50, it means that they are 50-50, they are so-so. It means they are not satisfied, they are not dissatisfied, they are in the middle. They are crossover point. The second step is fuzzy truth table algorithms. In this section of the fsQCA, software explore all possible conditions. All possible conditions that lead to the given outcome. But you know, we have many possible conditions. We need to use some criteria to explore, to refine the all possible conditions to the conditions that are sufficient and consistent. It means that we should rely to our results. We should know that what conditions are sufficient and consistent. Like the measures that we use in the symmetrical approach, in the SEM. For example, we consider R-square and correlations as the criteria for refining our results. Here, instead of the R-square, we have coverage. Instead of the correlation, we have consistency. We applied this probabilistic criteria to refine all possible conditions and come up with more rigorous and with more probabilistic outcome conditions. But what is the coverage and consistency? Maybe and participants are not familiar with this approach. I'm going to define these terms. Coverage, which is analogous to the coefficient of determination R-square in the symmetrical approach. Actually, it's measured proportion of the memberships in the outcome that is explained by the complete solution. Complete solution is like causal recipe. Don't worry, I have some examples in the next slide, then you will understand more. Consistency is a measure, actually consistency measures the proportion of the cases consistent with the outcome. This is the example that easily you can understand what is the consistency and what is the coverage. Yes, imagine these pictures show a set of the satisfied tourists from two groups of the people, Asian tourists and Western tourists. We have total 27 tourists, 14 are Western tourists here, and Asian tourists who are satisfied, the number is 13. Dissatisfied tourists, we have 11 Asian dissatisfied tourists and 2 dissatisfied tourists. So, what is the coverage of the Western satisfied tourists? To calculate coverage, we divide the number of the Western satisfied tourists, we divide this number to the whole number of the satisfied tourists. So if you divide 14 by 27, which is the total number of the satisfied tourists, you come up with 0.52. This is the coverage. This coverage shows that the proportion of the memberships in the outcome that is explained by the solution. What is the solution? The solution is the Western tourists. And what is the outcome is? Outcome is satisfied tourists. So if you simply divide the number of the Western who are satisfied to the total number of the satisfied tourists, you will come up with the coverage. But what about the consistency? Consistency, as I mentioned, it measures proportion of the cases that consistent with the outcome. Look at here, Western tourists, the number is 14, and the total number of the Western is 16. You have 14 Western tourists, satisfied tourists, and 2 dissatisfied tourists. So we need to divide the number of the Western satisfied tourists to the whole number of the Western tourists. The result is 0.87, which is acceptable level. It should be more than 0.8. Just I want to add one more explanation. For counterfactual analysis, there are 2 cutoff level. You can use 1 for the coverage and 0.8 for the consistency for a small to medium sample size. But if you have a large sample size, you may consider 2 as a cutoff for the coverage and 0.85 as the cutoff for consistency. So I explained what are the 3 steps of the fsQCA, which are calibration, a fuzzy truth table algorithm, and counterfactual analysis using coverage and consistency. In this section,
Professor Olya?
Yes?
There's one question about just this section. If you don't mind, I want to read this to you quickly before you go to the next section.
Yes.
One attendee asked, what are the assumptions of using QCA? And the other one, we are calibrating our items from crisp value to fuzzy sets. Yet we use linear crisp values in our factor analysis. How is it justified? And should we?
Yeah, I think if we continue, I will explain that.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
They will, I think they automatically will find their answer.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Then yeah. Thank you.
This section, I want to show a process of the designing a research. Especially this slide is helpful for the young researchers to know how they can design their research, what analysis they need to employ to come up with the different results, different type of the modeling they should apply in their research. Because nowadays, you know that it's very competitive to get published in the top journals. You need to apply the advanced methodological approach to increase your chance or to provide a methodological contribution to your research that increase the chance of the publications. I use this graph from one of my research. As you can see, you need to first design your survey, an instrument. You need to design a sample design, the number of the sample you want to collect based on the resources that you have, based on the time, money, and other factors that affect your number of the items that you are going to employ. Then you need to do a pilot study to see what are the ambiguity and the problems, possible problems in doing your research. If the means of your scale items is not in English, then you need to apply back translation method. Then you need, if you need more information, you can go to the original articles. You can see it in this, I provided sources, and at the end of the slides you can see the more references. Then you will collect your data in the field. After the collection of data, you need to enter your data and deal with the missing data and screening the data. Then you need to check the measurement model testing using some measures like Colombo alpha, composite reliability for the reliability of your measurements, and also you can check the validity of the measurements using EFA, exploratory factor analysis, and CFA, confirmatory factor analysis. Then you need to do cross-tabulation analysis that I explained for finding the contrarian cases in your research. If you come up with the remarkable number of the contrarian cases, then it would be a green light for you to do asymmetrical approach like fsQCA and NCA. It told you that the distribution of the dependent factors, I mean the association of the independent factors and dependent factors are have asymmetric relationship or asymmetric distribution, not symmetric distribution. So this informs us what is the association of the dependent factors with independent factors. After this, you can run SEM to find sufficient factors, sufficient antecedent for the outcomes. Then you need to use fsQCA that include 3 steps to come up with the sufficient configuration of the factors. Apart from this, you need to check predictive validity. Maybe this is new to many researchers. Next slide, I will provide more example. I will explain how they can check predictive validity. And the last analysis that inform us and identify necessary condition is NCA, necessary condition analysis. So you see in one research, it's not just that we perform one analysis, then do interpretation and provide implications. So you see now we need to do more analysis, more comprehensive analysis. And as I mentioned, we use Venn diagram. We use Venn diagram. These are the Venn diagram. It's not like just oval and circle or a square that we use for SEM. If you have 3 factors that you want to show as a complex configuration, you will use this figure. If you have 4 factors, you may use this one. If you have 5 factors, you need to use or draw this kind of shape. And if you have more factors, maybe 7 factors, you need to draw the causal complex configuration like these factors. This the pictures that provided below is one of my research that just published, that just get acceptance from the International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management. As you can see, I have 2 configurations. One is the demographic configuration. I employed 1, 2, 3, 4 demographic factors. Then I created a complex configuration and I call it and name it demographic configurations. Then another configurations is for place and host attributes that employed other antecedent conditions, and the outcome is behavioral intentions to use peer-to-peer accommodations. This article is accepted and this will be published in 2018. If the participant interested to know, I will share the original file. Yes, I think that this predictability is very important because many of you know that it's not just that we need to check fit validity for the measurement model and fit validity for the structural model. Still, we need to provide evidence for those, but now we need to provide one more validity check, which is predictive validity check for fsQCA model or configural model. What does it mean, predictive validity? Predictive validity shows that this configural model help us to model future data. It means that if we use another sample data, if we use future data, we would get same result. Because you know that maybe many people who are new in this method, they mentioned this approach is sensitive to the number of the cases because you are employing a small sample of the cases. So we doubt about the predictive validity of the model. So then we employ another test, which is predictive validity, to show the ability of this model for modeling using another sample or future data. So you can see this is an example that has an interesting story behind of this. This is publication that published. This is one of my publications published in JBI in 2017. It has an interesting story I'm going to share with our participants. First, let me to explain the procedure, 4 steps of the predictive validity. Then I will go to the graph. The first step is that you need to have two samples or 2 data sets. Normally, we don't have 2 samples. Then we divide or split our original sample in 2 sample size. I mean 2 samples. So we have one sample that called subsample 1. Another sample is subsample 2. Using subsample 1, we run fsQCA and we come up with some causal recipe. Yes, like this causal recipe. This causal recipe emerged from subsample 1. So we did step 2, which is modeling fsQCA using subsample 1. Now we need to use data of subsample 2 to model causal recipe of subsample 1. It means that we are using another subsample to check validity of the subsample 1, the models that emerge and calculated from subsample 1. It means that we are using another sample to see that this data give same and valid results. If we come up, which is checking the result, step 4, if we come up with high level of the consistency and coverage, the level, you know the level, the cutoff level, 0.2 and 0.8, respectively for the coverage and consistency. If you come up with this result, then you can claim that this configural model has predictive validity. But what is the story behind of this figure? Actually, the time that I submitted the first submission, I just did this procedure that I explained to you. I divided original sample to 2 samples. Since the duration of the revision and evaluation of the article took almost more than 8 months, interestingly, because I use a sample, I use secondary data from one web page, I mean the World Bank database. Hopefully the new data for 2014 released. So one of the reviewers was wisely advised us that, look, now you have a future data. Although it's a little bit tricky, they told us now we have in future data, which is 2014. You use data till 2013. Now use this data as another sample, as a future sample, and provide evidence of the predictive validity. Hopefully, we use future data and we come up with the high level of the coverage and consistency. And because you can see the 3 figure. The first one is the graph for the models that emerged from the subsample 1. The second one is the graph that shows coverage and consistency, acceptable level of the coverage and consistency for subsample of 2. And the last one is the graph for future sample, which is the sample of 2014. Just let me do. Yes, now I think that I explained that how people can employ a different analytical approach to increase the quality of their research by application of rigorous methodological approach. But the question is that what software we can use for running fsQCA and NCA. I used the list of the softwares from this webpage, compass.org, that provided many information, many books, many articles, many sources for this method. I myself, I usually use fsQCA 3. Now I think 3.5 released, and the participant is open access, it's free of charge. Participant and researcher, they can reach this and they can download this software, and also the manual, user manual from this webpage, fsQCA.com. It supports also Windows and Mac. The other environments and other softwares also developed by other researchers. This software developed by Regimes. Other softwares is researchers that they're comfortable, they can use, like R, which is need the programming and other softwares they can use. I just introduced and listed, and the participant can use those software for running fsQCA and NCA. But the important part is part of this lecture is that what domain of the management use this approach. I extracted these facts and statistics from article of Con 2016, published Journal of JBR, that shows that the frequency of the publications in subdiscipline of the management, like finance, operations, strategy, marketing, innovation, human resource. As you can see, we don't have a category of the tourism. It means that this method is quite new in the tourism. Just we have few articles. I think more than 50. I'm sure that's less than 50. And then it shows that there is a potential for the researcher to apply this method and reach the quality of the paper by applying new method. As I mentioned, it's not just method, it's a set theoretic method because it's generating new knowledge. And in tourism, we need to apply this kind of method. About the scale, yes, you can see the different scale, individual level, the data focus on individual level, organization level, country and state and others. And this shows that we have a lack of the research in international level. If you use the data that is that compare international, I mean many countries together, so you can rely on that as an implication, as a contribution of your research. Yes, the last slide I provided sources that the participant can go and read and learn more about this lecture. I will share this PowerPoint with the Professor Chmanoglu, and they will provide this PowerPoint to all participants and they can use it. If you have any question, I would be happy to address the questions.
Thank you, Professor Olya. Yes, we have quite a few questions. We are going over the time, but I want to definitely ask you some questions from the attendees. So let me start reading them. And you may have already answered these, okay? So I'm just going to give you a chance okay. Could you please suggest a textbook on fsQCA and where to take a course on this technique if it is available?
Yes, if there are several books. I just want to add one more explanation. This fuzzy set the first time in 1989 or 85. I'm not sure about the exact date. This the fuzzy set introduced by Professor Zadeh, who is an Iranian-American scientist, as a new set of a new horizon in the science. Then in the social science, Professor Regins from United States, it applied this method in the social science. It means that in social scientists, I think they started from 1999 or 2000. Then they are ahead of our field, tourism and marketing field. They have many books, many references that the participant that they can use because they are more expert in this field. Then the marketing field, they are using Professor Woodside. He used in 2013, 2012. Now we are using in tourism field. But what are the specific book? I don't want to just name the specific books, but if the participant go to the compass.org, they can come up with the several books, and this web page updating the new books that released and published in this field, this methodology. And also they are providing the new articles that they can get familiar with the new approach. And also this web page provides user manual. The user manual of the software designed and provided by Professor Regin. It explains step by step, by examples, by the numerical value. They can easily follow the instructions and they can run the model. But Professor Jubanoglu, you know that application of these softwares, explaining of the application, it was not in our agenda for this webinar, but if there is a demand, there is a possibility to arrange another webinar and explain practically fsQCA and NCA.
From the questions, I already understand there is going to be a strong demand for this, so we would appreciate it. We can schedule it for a later date and then advertise to our audience. Another question, Professor Olya, what do you mean by a small, medium sample size and a large sample size?
Yes, a small sample size, I explained. If your sample size, the number of the cases, the number of the participants, the number of the people who participate and you collected data from them is about 5 or more than 5, it should be more than 5. These are a small sample, 5 to 100. This, we call it as there is not any, agreement among the researchers, but more than 5 to 100 is called a small sample. Or 5 to 30 is a small sample. 30 to 200 is medium sample size. More than 200, 200 to 1,000 is a large sample size.
Okay. Another question. How to calibrate financial data in fsQCA, for example, for accounting ratios?
Yes, for calibration is a technical process. For in tourism field that we are collecting survey and we are using ordinal value that we measure factors from Likert scales range from 1 to 7, 1 to 10. Is quite simple. We simply select 5 as 1, 3 as 0.5, and 1 as a 0. It's very simple. But in the financial issues, financial factors, two factors are important. First, researchers should have a strong knowledge about those factors and those criteria that they are using. They should know, for example, if we take example from the financial issues like tax, researchers should have knowledge that what is the low level of the tax, what is the average tax, and what is the high level of the tax. So they need to be expert to set the value, to set the threshold for each set. Then, for example, and it's very based on the context of the study. For example, maybe in the United States, the specific amount of the tax is low, but in the India, this value considered as a medium. So it actually heavily depends to the knowledge of the researchers.
Okay, thank you. I am also checking Facebook too, but one last question. We are really running out of time. In part 2, comparison of traditional approaches, is there a limit to the number of recipes you called it recipe, right? You can configure, for example, would low cool, low price, to satisfaction can be a logical and acceptable recipe to test. Additionally, what are the conditions or assumptions to be met when positioning these recipes? Should these be based on theory? Would this be a good one to test logical but not necessarily theoretically supported? Kind of like a lot of questions, but I think you understand the main idea in this question.
Yes. I just want to remind you that this approach is an analytical approach that is between qualitative and quantitative. Although we are using symmetrical approach, we have a theory behind our model, but it's like qualitative approach. We can also go further without theory. We are exploring, actually, we are exploring the causal condition. We are exploring causal recipe. So we are generating knowledge like qualitative approach that we need, like grounded theory, that we do our research, we collect our data, then interpret our data, our result to come up with a theory. So here, without any assumptions, we collect our data, we insert to the softwares, then we run fsQCA, and we come up with the causal recipes. You just be informed that we are using some probabilistic measures like coverage and consistency, like asymmetrical approach, to refine all possible conditions. It means that it's not just like qualitative approach that we accept all possible conditions. We are refining all possible conditions using coverage and consistency to come up with the sufficient and consistent causal recipes. But about the number of the causal recipes is highly dependent to the number of the cases and the number of the factors. If you have more factors, if you have more antecedents and the sample size is large, so you will come up with the more causal recipes. Why? Because if you remember, we talked about the contrarian cases. In this method, we care about the view of all people with different preferences, with different views. So it's normal by increasing the number of the sample and by increasing the number of the factors that you employed as an antecedent or ingredient of the causal recipe, the number of the causal recipe will be increased.
Perfect. Meanwhile, I would like to thank all the audience for participating in today's webinar with Professor Olya. It is almost 2 a.m. in Korea, Seoul, where he is presenting. So I really appreciate his time with us, and it was very interactive session. We received a lot of questions onto the website. anahei.org/Olya is the website where the recording of this webinar and all the other materials such as the PowerPoint presentation references will be housed. I would like to thank again to Dr. Olya for sharing his expertise, and of course all the attendees for coming to today's session. Please watch other future webinar lectures that we are going to have at anahei.org, ANAHEI.org.